Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited. I'm about to do a two-part series that goes over all of the planning and logistics and my top recommended places to stop at if you're planning to do a road trip across Canada. So the first part is going to be focused on the planning and logistics. I'll talk about exactly what I did and give you some ideas for some other options. And then the second part is going to go into breaking down each province and my recommended places for each province. All right, so let's get into part one. All right, so starting with planning the trip, let's talk about route options. So in my case, I actually flew over to Newfoundland and drove back to British Columbia with a friend that I had out there. So I only did the trip one way. You might want to consider your route a lot different if you're planning to go there and back, which is probably what a lot of people are going to do. So you might not want to take the exact same route on the way back. So keep that in mind as well. If I would have been doing the trip where I drove from British Columbia to Newfoundland and then had to drive back to British Columbia, I would do one route all throughout Canada, and then on the way back, or vice versa, I would actually go through the states, and then I would get to explore all of the northern states. So that would be my biggest recommendation to consider if you are going there and back, to consider going through the states one of the ways. But anyway, I'm going to just talk about from Newfoundland to British Columbia, but this can be reversed depending on where you're starting from. So when you're thinking about your route options, the first thing you're going to want to do is break down each province, the must-see places that you're going to go to, and obviously figure out the order on the map on where you're going to go first and then next. So that's exactly what we did. We did some research on each province, figured out, okay, we for sure want to go to these places. Then we just mapped it out like, okay, then that means we're here first and then there. And if you can keep things pretty flexible as far as timing goes, that would be even better, because the timing of your road trip is going to not be exactly what you thought it was. And it's better if you don't have, like, say, all of your campsites booked in advance or all of your hotels booked in advance, because it was so much nicer that we were able to just be flexible, and then every couple days we would go ahead and book our campsites, or if we were staying in a hotel, then we would book it. But we were only doing that a couple days in advance. The second thing you want to consider about your route planning is when you drive across Canada, especially when you get to Ontario, Google is going to want to take you through the states, because it's faster to cut through the states than to drive north and all around the Great Lakes. So you're going to have to keep that in mind and piece that part together. Find spots on the map further north so that you can reroute yourself. So that was another point I wanted to make sure that you had about planning things, especially if you're using Google Maps, which I imagine most of us are. All right, next let's talk about budgeting. So budgeting is going to vary a lot depending on, first, your vehicle. Are you in a car? Are you in an SUV? Are you in a camper? Obviously, if you have a car compared to a camper, the gas prices are going to be extremely different. So that's the first thing you need to consider, is the gas, depending on your vehicle. So yeah, we just got a rough estimate based on the vehicle that we were in. We were in a Chevrolet Cruze, so it's pretty good on gas, and we averaged it out, and for us it was around probably just about 1,000 is what we were guessing for gas for the whole time we were gone. We ended up being gone for 6 weeks, but we were flexible on how long that trip was going to take us. So we knew that it was likely that the gas was probably going to end up being higher if we stayed longer. And also we had to consider any times that we decided to reroute and go anywhere else. So I would always add a few extra tanks of gas to consider that too. Like if you just try and go based on, okay, here's what our average kilometers are going to be to drive across Canada, it's not going to be accurate because you're definitely going to do some detours. You're going to add in some other places that you want to go check out. That's maybe an hour detour. So yeah, I would just definitely overestimate your gas because it's probably going to be much higher than what you think. So I think honestly, we probably spent more like $1,500 in gas for 6 weeks. And obviously we were splitting all the costs, so that makes a difference too. All right, so as far as budgeting for accommodations goes, we wanted to keep the trip as cheap as possible. So obviously that means camping or sleeping in your vehicle. That is the cheapest way you're gonna go across Canada. So we decided to focus more on tent camping. We thought we would maybe sleep in the vehicle a lot more than we actually did, but it was not comfortable. It's not comfortable in a sedan. You know, we were able to put seats down and stuff, but it's not comfortable. It's very crammed and we had a lot of stuff. So the majority of the time we definitely camped at tent sites. There was maybe a few nights we did sleep in the car, and then we did spend some time like every few days or once a week in a hotel or Airbnb just to enjoy a proper bed, and you know, just the comforts of being inside. All right, so as for pricing for the accommodations, on average for camping, you can expect to spend around $20 a night. So some places are gonna be $10 a night, and some are gonna be up to $50. That was our highest campground per night. But on average, I would say we were spending $10 to $20 per night. As for Airbnb and hotels, we had no problem finding something for around $100 a night, especially on the east coast of Canada. It's a little bit cheaper than the west coast of Canada. And in fact, yeah, we didn't even consider staying in hotels or Airbnbs once we got into Alberta. Alberta and BC, they're super pricey for hotels or Airbnbs. So that was only on the East Coast. All right, and then when it came to food, we honestly did not go to restaurants like much at all. We had a propane stove with us, so we had all of our camping supplies. So yeah, he was able to bring his camping supplies. I ended up buying a couple extra things once I flew out there, like a cheap sleeping bag, and I got us a bigger tent to sleep in. But otherwise, he had all the other things, propane stove, cooler, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, we just really took advantage of that. Being able to cook our own food, that means it was, you know, a lot cheaper for food. And then once in a while, we would go out to a restaurant, but really like nothing more than what any of us would do in our like regular day-to-day life. So that makes a huge difference. Obviously, if you're gonna go out for your meals all the time and get takeout all the time, your prices are gonna increase greatly. So keep that in mind. Like if you can find any way to be able to cook your food along the way, you're gonna save so much money. And then budgeting for activities. So you're just gonna have to keep in mind like some of the major places that you're going to and factor in the prices for that. Look at the prices, make sure you know what they are. A lot of our activities, because we're more into nature, a lot of them were free. So that works too. Like if you're more of an outdoor person and you're like, okay, I just wanna go to the nice beaches, the nice lakes, go for some hikes or kayaking, then your prices are going to be obviously a lot less compared to somebody who might want to go to more attractions. And we did go to some attractions, like we went to Canada's Wonderland and went to Niagara Falls and did some kayak tours. So that is another factor that's going to vary a lot depending on how much touristy things do you want to do compared to outdoor activities. All right, so another factor about planning your trip is obviously whatever vehicle you're taking, you're going to want to make sure that You get a full check on it, get all the maintenance done. I feel very grateful that like we had no issues on our road trip. So yeah, another factor you might want to consider is making sure maybe you have like BCAA that's going to cover you if say anything happens, like breakdowns. Just having some sort of plan if something does go wrong with a vehicle, because that is something that can happen before. It's happened to me in other road trips. So definitely don't neglect preparing for that. All right, and then the other factor is obviously what are you gonna bring? What clothes do you need to bring? In Canada, even in summertime, there's still gonna be times of the year where it's gonna be chilly. You know, you can't just pack your summer clothes. You need basically everything in Canada. So consider that, your clothing. If you are gonna be camping a lot like we did, obviously you need all your camping gear, so making sure you have all of that. And otherwise, think about some other things too, like making sure you have extra water in your car, a first aid kit, jumper cables, a spare tire, like a good spare tire for your vehicle. I'm sure you can find a good road trip checklist somewhere online, or even ask, you know, we got some really cool tools for planning nowadays. I would honestly recommend using ChatGPT. If I would have had that when we did the road trip, that was only in summer 2023, so 2 summers ago. But yeah, I even just did a quick, because I didn't actually jot down exactly what we spent on gas, but I asked ChatGPT to give me an average based on this vehicle, and we're going all the way across Canada, not cutting through the US. Factor in like a few extra tanks of gas as well for detours. So take advantage of these AI tools we have too to help you with your planning. And I'm sure if I asked ChatGPT too, like, okay, I'm doing this road trip across Canada, can you give me a checklist of everything that I should make sure to pack? So try that as well. All right, so as for timeline, what I would recommend to you is, okay, first figure out what is the longest time you can be away for. So maybe you have 4 weeks off from work, or you got 6 weeks off for work, or you have the whole summer. Figure out the maximum time and plan it for maybe giving yourself like a week or two of flexibility. So for us, we did, okay, let's plan to do this between 6 to 8 weeks. And that worked out perfectly. We ended up being gone for about 6 weeks. But we had that flexible time too. If we were in a province and we're like, okay, we actually would like to stay here a bit longer, then we had that option. So give yourself some flexible time. So plan to be done earlier, and then that way you can account for any surprises or delays or wanting to stay somewhere a little bit longer. So an example I'm going to give you is we actually thought we were only going to be in Ontario for 4 days. And we ended up being there for 10 days. So what happened is we ended up connecting with some friends out there for a couple days. So that increased our time there. And then we didn't factor in the like how long it actually takes to get up and over the Great Lakes. And then by the time we got up to the northern part of the Great Lakes, we found this beautiful park and decided to camp there for 3 nights. So, you know, if we didn't have that flexible timing, then we would have been panicking. So my biggest recommendation though, when you're planning how long to do the whole road trip, if you could spend a good couple months doing it, I would highly recommend that, because 6 weeks was still a good amount of time, but because there was some provinces where we only decided to spend a couple days in, I realized that there's some provinces that I wished I'd spent more time in. Like, for example, I wished I had spent more time in Quebec. We were only there for 3 nights. I wish we would have spent more time in Nova Scotia. Even the prairie provinces, honestly, I wish I would have spent more time there too. Some of the most beautiful spots in the prairie provinces, like Manitoba and Saskatchewan, everybody kind of wants to just drive on through. They actually have some really beautiful national parks more north, so they're definitely off route, but I wish I would have had time for them. If you are planning to do this road trip, if you can give yourself a good couple months, I would highly recommend it. There's this one channel I got a lot of information from called Must Do Canada, and they did a big Canada road trip for 150 days. So I'd recommend checking out their channel too, just to also get a good breakdown of all the different things you can do in each province. But that's also what we're going to cover in part 2. I am going to break down each province and tell you my recommendations for each province, and just give you a little bit more logistics in each of those provinces too, like whether we decided to camp more or get Airbnbs more there, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm really excited to share part 2 with you. I also have a whole YouTube short series if you want to get a little preview of each province. I'll link that below. I've saved it to a playlist. This will be saved to the playlist as well. So I hope this gave you a good idea of how you can plan your trip across Canada. If you need any clarifications or you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I will answer all of your questions. All right, so thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so that you will get notified when part 2 is out. All right.